I have traveled down the spiritual path, the more discernment I have, and the less I'm willing to tolerate certain things. You would think, for someone who's a more conscious or more aware person, you must be very tolerant. And yet, ironically, interestingly, tolerance is not necessarily the thing. I have a very advanced discernment of the environments and the energies that I now would desire to place myself into. What I can tolerate and what I have a high ability to tolerate is the discomfort that comes when I'm in a situation that wouldn't be my preference. I have the ability to sit still, to be calm, even in the face of things that I wouldn't choose. Another soul here with us in the circle today. She is Louise, and I have had the pleasure of meeting Louise, and she's a really important part of the Recovery 2.0 community because she holds space in our meetings, and she holds space for our members, and she is just a lover of life and a lover of people, and it's a wonderful thing to get to know her. And I'm grateful, Louise, to you for coming into the circle and to bring an inquiry for us to consider.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on the circle, in the circle, on the circle. Yeah, I guess it's in the circle. Yeah, it's good to see you. Good to see you all. And thanks again for inviting me. So my question is, it's quite short and sweet, and maybe I can go, I don't know if it's sweet, it's short anyway. So my question is about letting go of judgment and that urge to judge sometimes. I've made huge progress around this with, again, recognizing when maybe I'm or noticing when I do judge and maybe not taking it further, but I feel it's something that's I've been so conditioned with from such a young age, and with being compared, and that leads me into judgment, and sometimes around yesterday I noticed myself out walking, and one car flew past me really fast, and I'm like, oh, that's a bad driver. And then another car came past really slowly, and I'm like, yeah, well, there's a good driver. And just getting into this sort of, this is good and that's bad, this food is good, that food's bad. And yeah, I think with my kids, sometimes I can move into judgment there. And yeah, I have come a long way with this. And then there's my inner critic that will start judging the judging as well. So then this judging the judging goes on. Yeah, so.
Judgment. Okay, very good. I love this increase so much. I'm going to explore it a little bit, and let's speak again after. Okay. I want to speak about discernment. I want to speak about tolerance. And I want to speak about judgment. And I want to speak about condemnation. Those are the 4 terms. In yoga, and in many spiritual paths, and I think in life generally, it is a really powerful asset or skill to develop discernment. Discernment meaning the ability to tell the difference between things. I discern something that is for example, in any situation, I discern danger or I discern safety. We grow up needing to make these points of discernment. We have to know. Otherwise, we won't be able to survive in this world. This is safe, this isn't safe. We discern everything. We discern. We are able to observe the differences between things so that we can make decisions based upon our discernment. And this is a very positive, very important process for human beings. It's particularly relevant right now because we live in a time, given the advent of new technology, which allows us to hear everybody's opinion in very powerful formats, that we have lost, to a certain degree, our discernment. It is very hard to know what's true and what's not true. And as artificial intelligence comes online, as it is every day, like exponentially fast, it's so fast, it's coming. It's here already, and yet it's going to be, in a year from now, where we'll be with the development of AI, and never mind 5 years, 10 years. It's just an unbelievable thing that we have to get used to. And with the development of AI, we're going to have even more challenge knowing what's true and what's not true. Our eyes will play tricks on us. Our ears. Behind this technology, I was just speaking to my wife this morning. This is true. Just this morning, I was on the phone with Kia. And I said, "How do I know this is really your voice?" Now, I was joking, kind of. How do I know this is really you? Maybe this is Kia Miller AI. And she said, it is me. I think. She said, "It is me, I think." And she said, I was just speaking with a friend of ours who is having therapy sessions with an AI version of their therapist. And on the one hand, there's something really cool about inexpensive therapy that anyone can access and you can get answers to questions. And then there's something very scary about getting advice or wisdom or trying to find a way forward from an artificially intelligent version of somebody. So I see both sides of this. But the point is, there's going to come a time very soon where we literally, you wouldn't know the difference. Now, AI can offer information. It can't offer heart. It can't offer wisdom. It can't play off of the energy from another human being that's in front of your face. But visually and auditorially, it's going to be very hard to know. So there's this discernment issue in our society right now. Really, really important. Then we get into this idea of tolerance, what we are willing or able to tolerate. It's interesting that the more I have traveled down the spiritual path, the more discernment I have, and the less I'm willing to tolerate certain things. You would think, you're for someone who's a more conscious or more aware person, you must be very tolerant. And yet, ironically, interestingly, as I've noticed, tolerance is not necessarily the thing. I have a very advanced discernment of the environments and the energies that I now would desire to place myself into. What I can tolerate and what I have a high ability to tolerate is the discomfort that comes when I'm in a situation that wouldn't be my preference. I have the ability to sit still, to be calm, even in the face of things that I wouldn't choose. So if I find myself in a situation that's unpleasant for me, uncomfortable for me, I try to come inside and recognize, wow, this is uncomfortable for me. Let's be really quiet. Let's not make a bigger problem out of this than it is. It wouldn't be my preference to be here. Let's see if there's an exit to this situation, because it's not my preference to be here, and that's okay. I've discerned an energy that is something that I don't actually desire to tolerate for any length of time. You could say, I've observed, or you could even say, I've made a judgment. So you have discernment, understanding the difference between true and false, understanding what's safe and what's not, what's pleasant or unpleasant. I discern these things. And there's nothing wrong with that. Not only is there nothing wrong with it, it's a survival skill. It's important. Then there's me recognizing and bringing this word tolerance into the mix, because I recognize with greater discernment, I have greater power of choice. And I can choose where to put myself. I can say, yes, I invite that, or I can say, no, not my preference. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's like, wow, good skill to have. And as you've heard, sometimes I find myself, I've made choices, or I end up in a situation where maybe I needed to learn something, or it was wouldn't have been my first choice, or maybe I thought it would be something that was uplifting and elevating to my soul and spirit, but it ended up not being that. And so there's something for me to learn there. So I'm developing this discernment. I'm exploring this thing called tolerance. What am I supposed to tolerate here? And what is not my preference? Then you get into, I'm going to come to this word condemnation. Because when you say judgment, and when many people say judgment, I believe what they're talking about is condemnation. To condemn somebody as good or bad, right or wrong. I condemn you to the island of wrong. I'm banishing you to the island of wrong. I'm condemning you. And the cousin to condemnation, or perhaps the more twisted cousin of condemnation, is to cancel somebody because they made a mistake, or they don't have the same values as you. Let's just cancel those people. I don't want to deal with them anymore. Everything they ever said or ever did must be bad because they have this opinion which is against my opinion and my way of seeing things, and I will not tolerate them any further on this earth, so I am canceling them. But before we get to cancellation, we have to condemn somebody. Condemnation. Judgment, to me, is close to discernment. It depends, I think we use the word judgment, and we're saying we're passing judgment on somebody. We're being the judge of someone else's life, someone else's character. And it's interesting because there's gray zone here. Am I not supposed to discern who's in front of me? I would not choose to put myself in the company of certain people. And yet, that's not painful for me to make that decision. I'm not caught up in that decision. I'm not thinking about it over and over. It's an energy thing. It feels uncomfortable for me to put myself in the company of certain people. So I would just simply choose not to be there. The words I use, as you've heard, 3 words: not my preference. And it's important because those 3 words are a complete idea. I don't need to explain myself. I don't need to tell you why it's not my preference. I don't need to put a person down. I don't need to speak about somebody and gossip. Someone says, would you like to go here? I do a quick search of my energy. No is the answer. I say, no, not my preference, but thank you. Would you like to try this? Not my preference. Thank you. Would you like to come to this event, that event, the other event? Not my preference, but thank you. Why not? That's just not my preference. I'm not getting into a philosophical thing about it. I'm not right. They're not wrong. They're not right. I'm not wrong. It's all perspective. It's all consciousness. It's all awareness, and it's all training and conditioning. And you use that word. You use that word condition. I've been conditioned, you said. Yes. We've trained ourselves into condemnation, putting another human being down as wrong. We train ourselves to surround ourselves with people who can prove that we are right. And it's exhausting. So I think when you bring up this term judgment, and when other people do, the reason it's so painful is because we can get caught up in our head and just judge everyone all the time. Look what they're doing wrong. Look what they're doing wrong. Wow, if they did this differently, everything would then be okay. Wow, this situation is messed up. That situation is messed up. How awful. And you're just caught in this negative loop. And that negative loop affects the frequency of your body, your internal frequency, your vibration. And your internal vibration is your external experience. So if you're vibrating with all this condemnation, we're no longer in the realm of simple discernment. Now we're in the realm of putting others down or building ourselves up, comparing ourselves to others. And it always comes from the ego and its insecurity. And so to own this, we just have to come back to ourselves and simply say, I'm whole unto myself. I don't need to be right. I don't need anyone else to be wrong. I'm in a body. I'm breathing. My heart is beating. I have a mind. I have desire. I have creative hopes and dreams. Let me work on those. It's so important to discern. It's so important to have the power of choice and to exercise free will. We've been given it. It's one of our great gifts. And it's important to know what works for you and what doesn't, and to have good boundaries to be able to say yes or no, and to know why you're doing it. The energy of passing judgment or condemning others is simply an exhaustive energy. And there's a little unpacking that we need to do there. So there are people in the world who do very violent things, unconscious things, painful things. It's important for me to see it. It's important for me to learn from it. It's important for me to understand that while abhorrent, some of those behaviors or all of those behaviors are part of the human condition. And I need to look within myself to see what aspect of violence is still alive in me. Where am I condemning? Where am I gossiping? Do I cancel people? How am I in the realm of compassion and understanding? Am I really a peaceful person? What am I projecting out into the world? When do I lose my temper? What bothers me? These are the most important questions I can ask myself every day. Or I can just say, the world is wrong. I'm right to condemn it. I'm right to be angry. I'm right to be bitter and resentful. And I can have a very bitter, angry, and resentful life. And I will not be contributing anything positive to the external world based upon the very negative things I'm experiencing in my internal world. So discernment, yes. Freedom of choice, good boundaries, yes. Practicing that, yes. Cultivating those abilities, absolutely. Judging in the sense of making a decision about what's right or not right for you, I'm all for it. But the judging, like passing judgment upon or condemning another person, I really want to stay out of that business. When I notice somebody is behaving unconsciously, there's something for me to learn there. If only just to know, wow, that's painful. I don't want to go there. That's also discernment. When we pass judgment on people, especially family, friends, and colleagues, people who are close to us, we remove ourselves from being of use to them in the future. A future moment where they might ask us for help. The minute we condemn somebody, cancel somebody, pass judgment upon somebody, they feel it. And we become an unsafe place. Better to hold space. Non-condemning. Not passing judgment upon someone else. Recognizing, wow, this person's having a challenging moment. I too have had challenging moments. I wonder what's to be learned here. Avoiding argument inside your own head. I was at a meeting recently and they talked about having conversations with people who aren't even there. That internal dialogue with someone that you resent or somebody that you are bitter toward or angry toward, and living in this false reality of resentment. Speaking to someone who's not even there, not present. So we all understand that. We've all done that. It's painful. To become more compassionate, more understanding, that's a superpower in this world. Less reactive, and to not argue. One of my favorite parts of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it says, we stopped arguing, we stopped fighting anyone and everything. We stopped fighting anyone and everything. I love it so much. That leads us down that path to freedom. And so on our journey, the question is always there. Do you want to be wise? Or do you want to be right? I'd like to choose wise every time. The beautiful thing about being on a spiritual path, a real spiritual path, if you're doing the work, it's going to be evolutionary. So you're going to experience different things along the way. And you will see if you pay attention, you'll notice that you changed your opinion and your perspective on things. That the way you saw things at one point in the past, and you may have judged somebody or some situation based on that level of consciousness, later on in a different level of consciousness, you had a different opinion. And maybe later on in yet another level of consciousness, you had a different opinion yet again. How many times have I been shown this lesson? That my opinion on things seems to change over time based upon where I'm at in my level of awareness. And so if my opinion changes, I have to ask myself, well, what's really true? Because I'll tell you, every time I have an opinion, it sure feels true to me. It sure feels true to me, you know? And so as I watch that opinion change, I have to say, well, wait a minute here. Let me be humble enough to say, I might not have all the facts. I might not always see things as clearly as I think I do. Better to watch, observe, and learn. Better not to react. Better not to condemn. The old adage from the Bible, ye who hath no sin on your hands, throw the first stone. Like when people come to me and say, well, you know, like with when somebody behaves unconsciously and they're, you know, in alcoholism, or they're dealing with drug addiction, or they're dealing with sex addiction, or they're dealing with some form of unconsciousness, they say, can you believe this? And I say, are you really asking me if I can believe that? I was that at one point. I understand that. I know what it is to be unconscious, to be stuck in addictive patterns. I know what it is to behave from that place. Of course I can believe it. And I know that until we all move beyond those addictive patterns, we're going to continue to behave in some pretty painful and violent ways. And there's a tremendous amount of awakening going on in the world right now. And I live in the understanding of that. And I'm very, very, very excited and hopeful for what's yet to come. There are days where I get drawn into the melee and I can feel negative for a minute, but I come back to the reality that I'm not seeing so many of the positive things that are going on because our society has a negative bias. We show each other negativity more than we show each other positivity. So what's out there, we're not getting a clear picture of it. I have to remind myself. Again, discernment. I'm discerning what is right, what is wrong, what is true, what is false. I'm discerning what's appropriate for me and what's not appropriate for me. I have to make judgment calls, but that doesn't mean I'm passing judgment or condemning another human being. So these are some really important qualifications. In terms of tolerance, I find that the skill is to be able to tolerate whatever shows up to the best of your ability with as much grace as you can, within reason. And also to recognize, the things that you would choose not to tolerate any longer because you're no longer in that space. I would never put myself in a bar with drunk people. Literally. I mean, I might end up there for 30 seconds, but I'd be out the door immediately. Not because I'm afraid of drinking, but because that whole vibration of being a drunk human being is so disgusting to me. I just wouldn't choose to be there. Have I condemned those people? Have I passed judgment upon those people? Of course not. I was those people. I know exactly what that is. I just wouldn't choose to put myself there anymore. It doesn't mean I'm putting them down. If anything, I really understand and have great compassion for desiring to live in that kind of way. This is really important for us to understand. It is okay for someone to take a stand for what they believe in, and it doesn't mean they're condemning other people who don't have those beliefs. So these are some very important things to think about as we hopefully desire to move towards a state of being where we are no longer arguing or fighting, where we can stand up and, be living in our truth and be living in our love, and be different and have different opinions and ideas and ways of living than other people and not have it be a problem. And having said all that, it is a complex world. Humanity is in an interesting inflection point right now. And for sure, it's very easy to get drawn into conflict, especially with the advent of these new technologies that we've spoken about. So we're working on it. I believe the battleground is the level of consciousness. That's where the fight has to be fought. And each of us has to fight that fight unto ourselves. The battleground of consciousness. How awake, how aware, how conscious can we become of what is actually real and what isn't? So thank you for this amazing inquiry, Louise. I want to hear any thoughts that have come up for you.
Yeah, so many thoughts. I think, just, first of all, I hope it is you, Tommy, not an AI dummy yet.
How will
I
you
can
know?
feel your heart. Yeah, so I think I'm pretty sure it's the real deal. We don't have AI Tommy yet, or maybe we do.
Not yet.
I don't know. Interesting you should say that, though. I was on a training recently, and I questioned that at one point. Is it live or isn't it live? Yeah. And the first time I'd done that. So interesting when you said about your conversation with
Yes.
Kia earlier. Yeah, I like the way you mentioned discernment. In fact, in my notes, I'd actually put, I sort of wanted to know what is discernment, and I can't see it now, but I'll stop looking for it. Yeah, I love the way you've broken this big sort of judgment question into smaller parts. It's really helpful to look at it that way, and yeah, learning to choose to pass, not passing judgment, but to make judgment calls on things. I need to do that if I'm trying to decide. I've been looking at trainings recently, and I've got to weigh up, and that, I guess, is a discernment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So no, thank you so much. A lot for me to unpack, and thanks for the clarity.
Yes. Good. I want to say that one way we can tell when we're in appropriate judgment of a situation, meaning discerning if this is right or not right, or what it is, or if we've dropped into condemnation, and that's sort of the shadow side of judgment, if you will, is the energy that's behind it. If there's an anger or an intensity, we're into something that is needing to be looked at. It doesn't mean that we can't be upset by things that we see. I mean, of course you can. It's okay. I've said it before. I mean, when I speak to people that are in a corporate structure, like Verizon Wireless, or and I'm on trying to get to customer service, and I'm trying to get help, and a person says, "Well, sir, we have a policy, and that's just the way it is." Like, I get upset with that. Because I want people to think for themselves and not just bail out behind a policy, which doesn't necessarily feel right to me. Nonetheless, that's their policy. That's the way they are. And so I can feel like, oh God, this is so dumb. But it's not, if it stays with me and bothers me over time, that's something for me to look at. I have to be in acceptance of that too, and I can make choices to work with different companies or live a different way. But it's very, very easy to feel frustrated by certain things in the world, especially today, and by people, especially today. And if we live in that place and there's a big charge behind it, we are going to be very unhappy people. And so we have to find a way to direct our mind towards what is working, more towards what we're for than what we're against. It's good to know what you're against. And surely, I'm against unconsciousness. I'm against addiction. I'm against manipulation of people. It's all true. I'm for recovery. I'm for the path of yoga. I'm for freedom. I'm for greater health, and I'm for empowerment of the individual. More important that I focus my mind there than on what I'm against. And that holds a little bit of the key, I think, for us moving beyond the shadow of judgment and condemnation and work on the things that we can do to make a difference in the world. If we stay in the judgment, we can very easily fall into blame and complaint. It's your fault. It's their fault. If this sucks, that sucks. If you weren't this way, this would have worked out better. If that doesn't do anything for the world. It just keeps us all stuck in argument. So that's how important this inquiry is this inquiry has the potential of helping us go from life is happening to me, where I can blame and complain, to life is happening for me, where I see life as a gift and I get to be creative within this gift and move towards solutions to problems that affect me. Then we're in an empowered place and it feels good. So thank you so much, Louise.